The New York Rangers are set for a heavyweight fight with the 14-1 Winnipeg Jets. We discuss why this is the biggest game of the season so far, plus the Hartford Wolf Pack names a new captain.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1180 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers coming off a 4-0 win in Detroit, a final score that makes it sound like the Rangers played quite a bit better than they did. Obviously, you take the 2 points and you move on, but there were certainly some aspects of the Ranger game that left something to be desired on that night in Detroit. And they're going to have to be better if they're going to get a win against the team that they're about to play, which is, of course, the 14-1 Winnipeg Jets. We're going to go ahead and basically just kind of summarize what the Jets have done so far this season, just to give you guys an idea of exactly what the Rangers are up against here. And then I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit later as we go through the episode here and talk about why I really believe this is the biggest game so far of the season for the New York Rangers. So to begin with, once again, 14-1, that's the record of the Winnipeg Jets. You know, whoever your team is, I feel like you can always find reasons to be optimistic and feel good about the forthcoming season, but no fan base ever is going to expect its team to start the season 14-1. But the Jets have smashed all expectations. And I mean, they were a good team last year. They made the playoffs and everything. I believe they finished second in their division before losing to the Avalanche in the first round. But nevertheless, I mean, this is just wild. They start the season with an 8-game winning streak. They finally lose at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-4 on October 28th, and now they're on a 6-game winning streak. So, I mean, think about it. We're at the beginning of November here. They already have 2 separate 6-game winning streaks. There are teams in the NHL that are not even going to come close to having a single 6-game winning streak the entire season. Also of note here, that means that if the Rangers were to win this game, that would be Winnipeg's first road loss of the season. So a good challenge there for the Rangers, and why not the Rangers? You know, they can play better than they did against Detroit, and like I said, they're going to have to. The Jets have also scored more goals than any team in hockey with 67. So they're basically averaging 4.5 goals per game, which is insane, an unsustainable number to be sure, but it gives you an idea once again of just how much this team has stormed out of the starting blocks. And they are also second in the NHL in goals against. Only the Rangers have allowed fewer goals than the Jets. The Jets have they've allowed 31 goals. The Rangers have allowed 30 goals. With the Rangers, it's due mostly to Igor-Hellebuyck and to a lesser extent also Jonathan Quick, more so than anything else. But in terms of goals allowed per game, the Jets still have the Rangers beat because the Jets have played 15 games. The Rangers have only played 13 games. And in addition to all these insane stats, if you want one more, before we kind of dive into this in greater detail and get into kind of the nitty gritty as far as why the Jets are this good to start the season, one more surface level stat that I can throw at you guys here. In the Jets' last 3 games, they have given up a grand total of 1 goal. That's it. So the Rangers certainly have their work cut out for them. They need certain players that maybe have been in a little bit of a slump to get things going a little bit, and we'll challenge some of those Ranger players a little bit later in today's episode. But as far as like looking at the Jets from their perspective, any conversation with their dominance has to begin with Igor-Hellebuyck. He honestly might be the Rangers' best friend when it comes to contract negotiations with Igor Shesterkin. When you look at what Igor-Hellebuyck has done and what he's currently doing with the Jets this season, and you look at his price tag, I mean, he's well paid, but it's nowhere near the level that Igor Shesterkin is looking to get. But bottom line, Hellebuck's been amazing. 11-1 to start the season, 183 goals against average, a .935 save percentage, and already 3 shutouts. He has given up 1 goal or less in 6 of his 11 games to start the season. I mean, just video game numbers basically across the board for this team. They can score 2. It was interesting because I looked up last year's stats. The Jets last year, 15th in the NHL in goals scored per game. So, you know, right around the average level. This year, they're first. They lead the NHL in goals scored per game. They've got 5 players. They're in the top 46 as far as points are concerned so far this season. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, they're tied for 13th in the NHL with 19 points. Nikolai Ehlers has 18 points. Josh Morrissey has 16 points. Neil Pionk has 14 points. And on top of all that, this is probably to the surprise of no one based on everything that I've just said, but a phenomenal power play unit as well. The best power play unit thus far in the NHL with a success rate of 41.9%. The second best power play in the NHL, at least according to success rate, is the Avalanche at 34.6%. Now, 41.9% on the power play, again, not sustainable for an entire season. It basically can't be done, but the bottom line is they're hot right now, which leads me into what I want to talk about with the Rangers, and that is something very simple that I think they have to do in this game. They need to stay out of the penalty box. The Rangers recently, it hasn't really gotten a lot of attention because there's a lot of other things that the Rangers are talking about. The phenomenal goalie play, the fact that the Rangers' own power play is scuffled a little bit, although they're quietly starting to turn a corner recently. Certainly, there's certain individual players on the Rangers that are not playing at the level that I think a lot of us expect them to. But something that's kind of a little bit of a subplot right now is the Rangers are taking too many penalties, and they're taking too many bad penalties, unnecessary penalties. We know penalties are going to happen, but they're taking penalties that they don't have to take in the neutral zone, even in the offensive zone. It can't happen. Right now, what's happening, and the reason why it hasn't become more of a storyline, is the Rangers have an elite penalty kill unit, now number one in the NHL at 91.1%. So a lot of the unnecessary and frankly just dumb penalties that the Rangers have taken recently, it's getting masked by the fact that they do have an elite penalty kill and they tend to kill it off. But you're really playing with fire if you're taking a lot of penalties against this Winnipeg Jets team. And to kind of illustrate my point, if we look at the last handful of games that the Rangers have played, from most recent to least recent, we're going to look at the 4 or 5 most recent games that the Rangers have played here. In terms of how many power plays they've allowed. Now, there weren't too many against Detroit. That's one thing that the Rangers did well in that game. They stayed out of the penalty box. But nevertheless, Detroit got 2 power plays in that game. The most recent game before that, Buffalo got 4 power plays for the Sabres, and obviously that was a terrible night for the Rangers. The game before that, the Islanders got 5 power plays. Game before that, the Senators got 5 power plays, and the game before that, the Capitals got 4 power plays. So like I said, that's a lot, and it's something that they have to get under wraps for such a good team, first of all, against the Jets, but also a team with such an elite power play to start the season here. So those are a couple of the keys and just kind of an overview of the Jets. Also, while we're talking about special teams, despite everything I just said there, and that will be a fun battle. I mean, I'm hoping, like I said, the Rangers can stay out of the box, but if they do take a couple of penalties and they end up shorthanded once or twice, I mean, that's okay. You kind of can accept that. You will have the best penalty kill in the league up against the best power play in the league. But when you look at it from the other perspective, the other special teams matchup, the Rangers have the number 6 power play, and the Jets have the number 13 penalty kill. So that seems to be advantage Rangers at least a little bit as it pertains to special teams. And I mentioned earlier, the Ranger power play is quietly moving in the right direction. They haven't had one of those like onslaught kind of games, but they are 4 for their last 14. Small sample size. It doesn't knock your socks off, but that is a good percentage, and you can live with that, going forward in the NHL season. If you continue to go 4 for 14, you're going to be near the top of the league when it comes to, power play success rate. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to discuss why I believe this is truly the biggest game of the season for the Rangers. We're also going to ID a couple of players on the Rangers where, frankly, it's gut check time. It's time to put up or shut up. It's time to go out there and play the way that you're capable of playing. And we're going to do all that in just a second. And also, a little bit later in today's episode, going to take a look at Casey Fitzgerald, who just recently was named the new captain of the Hartford Wolf Pack. Going to have some thoughts on that as well. And we're going to do all that fun stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by SelectQuote. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy to your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your last $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go keep everything rolling here. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, in our next episode, we are going to be talking about whatever happens between the Rangers and the Jets on Tuesday night. Like I said, it's a heavyweight fight and a big measuring stick thus far for the New York Rangers. And that kind of leads me in nicely to the next thing that I want to talk about here, why this is such a big game for the Rangers and why, in my very humble estimation, I believe this is the biggest game thus far for the Rangers. You could maybe make an argument that the game against the Panthers was the biggest game, but you know what? That game is come and gone and it's over with. Rangers didn't play so great in that one, lost 3-1. At this point, given everything we've seen so far and just kind of where the Rangers stand thus far in the season, you weigh all the good and all the bad things that we've seen from this team. To me, this is the big one. This is a game that you have to go out and win, and you have to put your best foot forward, and you have to play like the New York Rangers. The first reason, very simple, and we basically covered that in the last section, the quality of the opponent. The Winnipeg Jets are 14-1 to start the season. Another reason why I think this is such a big game is the Igor versus Hellebuyck dynamic. If you're a fan of good goaltending and you're just a neutral NHL hockey fan, you don't really like the Rangers or the Jets, this is the kind of game that you want to tune in and watch. But you're talking here about two of the absolute best in the sport. You could make a pretty strong case, I think, that over the last 5 years combined, these are the two best goalies in the NHL. You've got Connor Hellebuyck, who's off to, like we said, a phenomenal start this year. He's finished top 5 in the Vezina in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He's won the Vezina twice. Igor Shesterkin, we know he's won the Vezina. He's been top 3 a couple of times as well. But then there's also kind of this side story that's going on right now as it pertains to the goalies. And that is, and I touched on this very briefly in the last section, the contract situation. Obviously, the Rangers want to get something done with Igor Shesterkin. They offered to make him the highest paid goalie in NHL history. Igor Shesterkin said thanks, but no thanks to that offer. But the issue that a lot of Ranger fans have, even with the contract that was offered by the Rangers to Igor Shesterkin, is that no other goalie in the NHL right now, and we can't really count Carey Price because he hasn't played in years, no other goalie in the NHL is making anywhere near $11 million per year. Connor Hellebuyck, one of the absolute best. He signed a 7-year extension worth $8.5 million per season. And then Igor, like I said no to $11 million per season. Now, I do think Igor Shesterkin is the better goalie. That's really on display in the playoffs. If you look at their career numbers in the playoffs, Igor's got Connor Hellebuyck beat by a lot. Like, Hellebuck's playoff numbers aren't terrible, but they're nowhere near what he's done in the regular season. And Igor's been even better in the postseason than the regular season. If I can build my team around one goalie in the NHL, cost aside, I'm picking Igor Shesterkin. I think he does deserve to be the highest paid goalie in the sport. But it does beg the question, is this guy really worth $3 million more per season than Connor Hellebuyck? I think that's debatable at best. But all eyes are going to be on this, from just about every perspective, because Igor Shesterkin really cannot afford to have a bad game here. He had a bad game against the Sabres. I mean, granted, he got zero help, but clearly he did not have his A game either. So he needs a big-time bounce-back performance. He sat at the last game against Detroit. Jonathan Quick went in there and shut everything down. But you're up against an elite offense and an elite goaltender who is making $8.5 million per year. And if you're Igor Shesterkin and you want significantly more than that, then okay, go out and show us why. Go out and show us why you're worth more than $3 million per season than Connor Hellebuyck is getting, or show us why you're worth $3.5 million more or $4 million more or whatever it is. It's one of those situations where, not to be too blunt, but it's put up or shut up time. I really don't feel like, from Igor Shesterkin's perspective, when you consider everything that's happened with the contract extension situation, he cannot afford to go out there and lose this game 5-1 and get pulled out of the game in the second period. That's just not going to look good. And, frankly, people are going to have a field day with that. There's other fans around this league of other teams who are not the biggest fan of the Rangers. They're going to have a field day with that. And I think there's even some Ranger fans who feel like Igor wants too much money. They don't think any goalie should be making, more than $11 million per season. Maybe even $11 million is too much for some of you. They're going to have a field day with that as well. So to me, Igor Shesterkin really needs to dig in and have his A game and basically shut down the Jets, which is a heck of a lot easier said than done right now. There's also a big game because in addition to Igor Shesterkin, I feel like there's a lot of players on this team that have not really quite lived up to expectations so far this season. Now, it is still somewhat early in the season. The Rangers have only played 13 games, which means they've got, 69 games to go. There's a lot of hockey left to be played and a lot of chapters left to write in this upcoming season. But, you look at somebody like Mika Zibanejad. He, on the surface, as far as point totals go, it's not bad at all. But I think when you watch this team play, you feel like he could dig in a little bit more, be a little bit more engaged in these games. There's certain nights where he's just kind of drifting around out there. He's now with Panarin and Lafreniere. And to me, it feels like the biggest reason that the lines were shuffled in the first place were just to get Mika Zibanejad going. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but you guys know Mika has not been at his best, and this felt like a way to kind of, give him a jump start by putting him with, the two Ranger forwards that were off to the best start this season. And they did link up for a pretty nice goal in the last one. Lafreniere behind the net to Mika. Mika passes in front to Panarin on the other side of the net, and Panarin scores. So that was good and everything. But this line thus far, and it's still early, has failed to live up to expectations. Mika Zibanejad really needs to answer the bell in this game. He's got to be aware of the quality of the opponent that the Rangers are going up against here, and he's got to have, I just want to see a couple of those moments where that's Mika Zibanejad. We see like a vintage Mika Zibanejad moment. We see a guy that's always a point-per-game player. We see a guy that once scored 5 goals in one game. I don't expect that, really ever again. But he's got to be something close to that player, to that guy that goes out there and makes a difference and doesn't seem to be content just being a passenger and just kind of being out there. So Mika Zibanejad, this is gut check time for him. He's going to be going up against, the Jet star players and guys that have been really producing offensively. He can't be content with just canceling them out. He needs to go out there and have a big-time game. I think if Mika Zibanejad shows out in this game, has a multiple-point night, looks engaged, looks like he wants to be there and wants to, be the difference maker for this team, I think a lot of us are going to be feeling a lot better about Mika Zibanejad. That's another reason why, as kind of like a sub-note here, this is such a big game. If the Rangers win this game, a lot of the things that have kind of been like getting on our nerves lately and making us wonder about this team, we're going to all be feeling a lot better because there's no easy way to beat a team that's coming in at 14-1. I think another pair of players, we'll do 2 for 1 here, that are going to be under the microscope in this game, K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba. As I mentioned in the last episode, if it were up to me, I would split these two up. I would put Miller back with Fox. I would put probably Trouba with Schneider because I like the way that those two looked early in the season. And I'd drop Lindgren down to the third pairing with Jones most likely. But yeah, I mean, look, these two have not been great together, Miller and Trouba. Early in their career, I think they were. But last season and mostly this season, it just hasn't clicked. And both of them seem to be able to play better when they're with a different defense partner, whether it's Braden Schneider or Zach Jones or whoever it might be. It does seem like they tend to individually fare better when they're out there with a different defense partner. But the bottom line, it doesn't look like any changes are coming between now and the time that the puck drops. So if that's the case, then Miller and Trouba, they have a chance here to silence some of the critics because we've talked about the clip that the Jets are scoring goals at, 4.5 goals per game. If they can shut things down, that would be big. It's not uncommon for K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba to lead the Rangers in ice time among defensemen. That happened in the last game against Detroit. And certainly mixed results. Jonathan Quick bailed out them and pretty much every player on the Rangers over and over throughout that entire game. These two need a good showing, and I think it would alleviate some of the concerns that a lot of us Ranger fans have about this pairing if they're able to go out there and have a nice night. And I'll also throw Ryan Lindgren in there too, another defenseman. He's come under fire, hasn't really found his legs to start the season. Can he hold up against a team with as much firepower as this Jets team has? I think it's gut check time for him as well. And another thing here that we got to point out from the Rangers' perspective is that the Rangers have been criticized by, general hockey fans and even Ranger fans as well, that they haven't really beaten anybody so far this season. And there is some truth to that. I wouldn't say it's totally true. They did post a 3-1 win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if I'm remembering correctly, that game was in Toronto. So that's an impressive road win right there. But other than that, I mean, what's really like the signature win for this Ranger team so far this season? They lost to the Panthers 3-1 in a game where it probably wasn't even really that close. It kind of reminded me of the conference final where the Panthers just controlled way too much of the action. The Rangers, they also beat the Islanders 5-2, and that was a nice win as well. Obviously a Metro Division rival there, but the Islanders were a severely compromised team with all the players that they were missing due to injury. So that signature win isn't really there. The other big time matchup that they had so far this season was against the Capitals. They lost that game 5-3. So I don't know, man. If the Rangers go out there against the Jets and they get run out of the arena, it's going to be more fuel for these, Ranger doubters and the people that say that they haven't really beaten anybody so far this season. Now, it's not really completely the Rangers' fault that they haven't had a strong schedule thus far. They've been playing a lot of teams that missed the playoffs last season, and they mostly handled their business and taken care of everything. And the Rangers don't make the schedule. They just play whoever's next. So you can't put it all on the Rangers, like the fact that, that they haven't gotten the signature wins against the elite teams, but they've had a couple of chances and they've mostly lost those games. Like I said, I think the two big ones for me, the Panthers and the Caps, they lost both of those games and didn't really play so great in either one of those games. So you want to see them finally get a signature win. And man, I don't care if it's an out of conference team like the Jets are. I don't care if it's a team that the Rangers don't see very often. I don't even care if it's a team that maybe certain people think is playing above its head right now at 14-1. I mean, the Jets are a good team. I don't think anybody is 14-1 good. I don't care. Bottom line, if you beat a 14-1 team in basically any fashion, you're going to be feeling good about that. And it's going to be a chance for this entire Ranger team, I would say, to silence the critics, the people that say like, oh, well, they haven't really beaten anybody yet. This is a chance to definitely beat somebody. So let's hope the Rangers can go out and do exactly that. I'm going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to the Hartford Wolf Pack, and more specifically, Casey Fitzgerald being named the 15th captain in team history. We'll talk about him and the new alternate captains as well in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our very good friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is a guarantee. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, let's conclude today's episode by talking about the newest captain of the Hartford Wolf Pack. That would, of course, be Casey Fitzgerald, a defenseman, 27-year-old defenseman. He replaces Johnny Brodzinski, who technically, I guess, was still the Hartford Wolf Pack captain up until, a handful of days ago when they announced that it would now be Casey Fitzgerald. I mean, he was still listed as the captain, even though he's been on the Rangers and hasn't played a game with the Wolf Pack in quite some time. But yeah, Fitzgerald going forward will be the new Pack captain, and Anton, Blidh, and Alex Belzile announced as the alternate captains. It's always kind of a weird dynamic to me when it comes to an AHL captain, because on one hand, for the player, whoever it might be that's named the captain, it's an honor, right? No matter what sport it is, no matter what level you're at, I think being named the captain of your team is certainly something that's always an honor and something that certainly is not to be taken lightly. However, whether you're Casey Fitzgerald or any of the other captains around the AHL, whether you're, a grizzled veteran who's kind of been an AHL swingman over the years, or you're an up-and-coming prospect, to be named the captain of an AHL team, I'm sure there's like that little part of you that's like, okay, yeah, that's great, but I'm trying to make it back to the NHL. I'm sure Casey Fitzgerald, just like any other AHL captain, would rather be in the NHL and not be the captain or alternate captain or any of that, rather than be the captain of an AHL team. It's still an honor, but it's just always kind of a unique dynamic to me. And then, of course, from the team's perspective, how exactly do you choose a captain? Obviously, you're looking for, leadership and whatnot, and a player that the other guys tend to gravitate to. But you also have to do it with kind of an eye on the future. Like if it's somebody that the NHL team might be looking to call up soon, like say like Brandon Hoffman or Brett Berard, for example. I think in a perfect world, those two are probably New York Ranger regulars by next season at the latest. And if that's the case, then you're probably not going to make them the captain if you're in charge of naming the captain of the Hartford Wolf Pack. I don't know. It's just always been kind of a unique and kind of strange dynamic to me. But yeah, Casey Fitzgerald gets the nod. Again, 27-year-old defenseman, a former third-round pick by the Sabres in 2016. He went number 86 overall. He has played only 63 career NHL games. 59 of them were with the Sabres. 4 of them were with the Panthers, then another 2 playoff games with the Panthers, and then he spent all of last season in the AHL with the Charlotte Checkers. He signed a 2-year deal with the Rangers this offseason, and now that I'm thinking about it, the fact that he signed a 2-year deal, that maybe gave him a little bit of a leg up when it came to being named the new captain of this team. You wouldn't want to really do it with somebody who's only on a 1-year deal and might be gone next year. I mean, you could, but then you've got a captain who's only the captain for 1 season, and then he's gone, and you have to pick somebody else. So I feel like that may have given Fitzgerald a little bit of a leg up. Fitzgerald, he's one of those guys that, and under the radar signing for sure, all these teams bring in guys that are NHL, AHL swingmen at best. You've got to fill out your AHL roster. You're bringing in guys on 1-year deals at the league minimum or 2-year deals at the league minimum or just above. And that's what the Rangers did with Fitzgerald here. But, obviously he's going to be in town for the next 2 years, barring something unexpected. I reached out to Joe DiBiase during the preseason once the Rangers signed Casey Fitzgerald. Joe, of course, does an awesome job as the host of Locked On Buffalo Sabres. Didn't do a full-fledged crossover, but I read some comments that DiBiase had on Fitzgerald. He gave us a brief scouting report, and I'll go ahead and read that right here, right now, just to give everybody an idea of what Fitzgerald brings to the table, because obviously Joe saw him in action for a couple of seasons at the NHL level. So what Joe had to say: you don't want to end up with Fitzgerald being penciled into your opening night lineup. Much more organizational depth. If he has to play 10 to 20 NHL games for you, he'll do fine, but you'd like him to play more AHL games than NHL. Plays very hard for his size. Small, but will throw his body around, will fight, block shots, very solid penalty killer. He's basically a stay-at-home 6'4" defenseman in a 5'11" body. He lacks the puck skills and skating ability that most sub-6-foot defensemen need to be an AHL regular. Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. And when you hear Joe describe him, I mean, you hear all the little things that he does, kind of the gritty style of play, blocking shots, getting into fights, will throw his body around a little bit. So that's what you want from your captain, I think, at the AHL level. Somebody that can kind of set an example and lead the way for some of the younger guys and the bigger prospects that the Rangers have. Also worth pointing out, this is not Fitzgerald's first experience as a captain. He was a captain at Boston College in both his junior and senior seasons in 2017-2018 and 2018-2019. And thus far with the Pack this season, 12 games, 1 goal, and 6 assists for Fitzgerald. The Pack, by the way, now 5-5-2 to start the season. We might as well go ahead and talk a little bit about the 2 alternate captains as well. The first one is Anton Blidh, 29-year-old forward. Blidh really impressed me a couple of years ago in the Calder playoffs because if you guys remember, the Rangers had that wonderful first-round playoff series against the New Jersey Devils. They got eliminated in 7 games. And so I ended up kind of locking in on the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack made a little bit of a run that year, made it to the round of 8, I guess we'll call it, the conference semifinals, that would be. They had a good run, and Blidh provided some gritty hockey. He actually got injured in the middle of that run, but when I saw him, I really liked him. Just a hard-nosed player. He was up for 1 game with the Rangers last year. Former 6th-round pick by the Bruins in 2013. So he's obviously stuck around for some time despite being a late-round draft pick. 6 seasons with the Bruins, 1 with the Avalanche, 1 with the Rangers. Has never played more than 32 NHL games in a single season. Was previously an alternate captain for 2 years with the AHL's Providence Bruins. And thus far this year, 2 goals and 2 assists for Blidh in the 12 games. But I think this is a good choice too. Again, just kind of a battle-tested veteran, a little bit of an older player for the AHL, and somebody that, is kind of a hard-nosed player as well. And then you've got Alex Belzile, another veteran player. I believe he's now 33 or 34 years old interesting journey for Belzile. He's only played 44 career NHL games, but he didn't make his NHL debut until he was 29 with the Montreal Canadiens. So it's always kind of fun to root for players like that. Like I said, 44 career NHL games, all of them with the Canadiens over a 3-year span. He did have 14 points in 31 games in his final season with Montreal. Spent all of last year with the Hartford Wolf Pack after signing a 2-year deal with the Rangers. But he has been one of the offensive leaders, one of the better offensive players on the pack. Last year, 19 goals and 31 assists in 61 games. This year, 1 goal and 6 assists in 9 games. So overall, I think these are really solid, really smart choices by the Rangers. I mean, you could always, go with one of the younger players if you want, but I feel like AHL teams, they tend to favor the veterans when it comes to the leadership room, guys that have been around, guys that in a lot of cases have played at least a handful of games in the NHL, know what it takes to at least make it there. And, just kind of players where it's not their first rodeo, so to speak. Also, we're talking about the Wolfpack here. A couple of other things I want to just highlight real quick before we call it a day. Weird play for Ben Harpur in a recent game. Packed down, I believe, 5-1 at the end of a game, and he just skates up to the opposing goalie and just checks him back into the net. I don't know what prompted this, what his problem was, why he did this. Ben Harpur for this has now been suspended for 4 games. Some of you probably saw that highlight circling on social media. Just no idea why he did that. And one other thing, we had a Wolfpack player, Matthew Robertson, hit a milestone, 200 career games played with the Wolfpack, which sounds kind of fun and neat and interesting and everything, but when you think about it, it's really not a good thing. Matthew Robertson was a former second-round pick by the New York Rangers, and whether it's Matthew Robertson or anybody else, when an NHL team drafts a player in the second round, they're not looking for that player to reach 200 career AHL games before they play their first NHL game. And there were plenty of times last year where the Rangers could have called up Robertson for a brief stay at the NHL. They went with Brandon Scanlon for 1 game. They went with Connor Mackey for 1 game. He never got the call. He never got the nod. No idea what the future holds for Matthew Robertson. I mean, on one hand, look, he's playing pro hockey, right? And he's made it a heck of a lot farther in this sport than a lot of people do. Most everybody does. But yeah, it's just not, it's not coming together. And you have to wonder at this point, what his future holds with the New York Rangers. So, yep, figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.